Welcome back to the Psychedelic Mom Podcast. I'm your host, Michaela Carlin. I'm sure you've seen that image of the red mushroom with white polka dots. Well, that's the Amanita Muscaria mushroom. And in the psychedelic renaissance, we are mostly hearing about psilocybin mushrooms. There's so much research on how psilocybin mushrooms help with PTSD and trauma and anxiety and eating disorders and dementia and addiction, so many things. But I wanted to illuminate today a different mushroom. So I invited the Amanita Warrior on. His name is Rael. And I received a beautiful gift from Rael. It's a microdose. And I microdosed right before the show. And one of the things that happened before this episode, which was pretty wild, I had 2 other interviews today. And all of a sudden, I go to interview Rael, and my video camera on my computer is not accessible. And so for about a half an hour, I worked on trying to figure it out, which is usually I can figure those little things out. I'm not a tech whiz, and usually my podcast producer is available for that. And I was about to call the interview when I shut down my computer and I thought, what else can I try? And I thought, well, I haven't prayed to the mushroom yet. So I said, come on, Amanita Muscaria, help me out. Have my video camera go on, which I had tried 3 times. I'd shut down my computer 3 times. And suddenly I turned on the computer and there we had it. So in these 2 episodes, you're going to be learning about Amanita, how to microdose it, what it is like compared to psilocybin, what a microdose, a mid-dose, and a heroic dose are like, why it's important to go slow, how Amanita Muscaria is a different teacher than psilocybin. And you're going to hear about the Amanita Warrior's own personal journey of leaving everything behind to become, as he describes, kind of an ascetic hermit mushroom forager. And he's very dedicated to this mushroom. His life is incredibly disciplined. And he says that that's partly from Amanita. He has a lot to say about this mushroom and what has taught him and what he believes that it wants the world to know. He believes it's kind of his mission to bring this mushroom forward. So I hope you enjoy these episodes about Amanita Muscaria. And if you want to hear another personal journey about Amanita Muscaria, and also from a ethnobotanist, I did a great episode with Ash Ritter and also Valerie Shaling, who was an artist who felt like Amanita Muscaria helped her with her depression and her creativity. I'll leave the episode numbers in my show notes. I hope you enjoy the magic of mushrooms in this episode. Welcome back to the Psychedelic Mom Podcast. I'm here today with Rael. I'm so excited to have you here today and have a conversation about this mushroom that is really the mushroom we identify when we think of magic mushrooms. But I think a lot of people confuse Amanita and psilocybin. So we're going to have a conversation today about this mushroom, about what it can teach us and your journey. So let's just start with why this mushroom is so important to you. And why would that work? If I said a little prayer to this mushroom, all of a sudden the computer works. Why? Do you know what's happening?
Yeah. So this is really like the reason that I'm here and that I went through all the stuff I did. I discovered many years ago some things about life, let's say, and things about spirituality that basically, if you understand the system that you have, life is actually can be a lot easier than people thought. So usually people try to solve a problem. They just go up here and they just think, oh, I'm just going to figure it out. Well, I mean, you might, but that's kind of a limited way of going about it. What's an unlimited way of going about solving your problems is through prayer. And when people start doing it, the thing is this, look, I understand that there's a lot of people out there who have objections to this type of activity, and they think there's problems with it and that it misleads people and whatever. What you need to understand is that your mind is powerful. And we as humans have not fully tested the limits of what the mind can do. I set out years ago to break the limits. So not just find them, but break them, to find out how to break them. So what I'm saying is, in spirituality, the goal is always be one with God, or to have a life that is better, right? You want something that is better. So the purpose of spirituality is to have a better experience, let's say. The way that occurs comes through your belief system. So whatever you perpetually put your belief into, meaning like what you act upon, that starts to become real for you. So for a person who doesn't believe in God, guess what they're never going to do, no matter how much they test it? Prayer. That's never going to work for them because they don't believe in it. So if you believe in something of any kind of higher power, it doesn't have to be Christian version of God or whatever, but a higher power, you believe in a higher power, and then when you go through the practice of prayer, what you're doing is you're just kind of connecting things that are energetic, let's say, in nature. You're connecting you have a need, you have something that has to occur, and so you just allow for the need to be met. Now, if a person is stuck in negative emotions, they're generating additional needs. And then you have a problem which just cascades out of control. You see, because in the present moment, you don't need to suffer. So if a person is trying to solve a problem and that's how they feel, prayer is not really going to work. So they have to be aligned with the Creator in order for prayer to work. And the way that you're aligned with the Creator is that you're at peace. Why should you be at peace? Because, well, we have this experience. Where did we come from? Like, where did all this start? We don't really know. We don't have clear answers about most of the things in life. So there definitely is some higher power that somehow is ordering all of this. This was Stardust a while back. Now it's a whole species of people running around.
Right.
So something's making this, and as long as you understand that and know that that's the truth, then you just live by it. And then it's like, you know what needs to happen? This needs to be fixed. Can I have that fixed? Oh, and then it does. So you see, when you live in the way that I'm describing, in this way of alignment, then prayer works. When you're not in alignment, usually people are praying for things that they don't really need, and for stuff that doesn't matter. And so when they pray for it, the universe is like, oh no, solve your own issues first, solve your emotions first. That's what the universe wants. Okay, so like I was saying, because your emotions are going to direct where your intentions go, and your actions, and everything.
Whether you call it God, true nature, essence, true being, there's something obviously way beyond this human character. And ultimately, we are connected to it. That human character begins to fall away. The mushroom, how does this aid in that process? And do you view the Amanita Muscaria as a higher intelligence or a frequency or both?
Oh, it's absolutely an extraordinarily intelligent organism, and that's not really even my opinion. I mean, scientifically, they know that Amanita Muscaria, they know that all mycelia are immortal. They're not subject to natural death. So mycelia are organisms that live in the soil, they live in the ground, they go miles and miles deep into the ground, and they connect all of the plants through the forest. And so they have access to all of the information of all of the plants on Earth, and they're immortal, and they've been doing this since there was life on the Earth. So they recorded everything that has ever happened. They know everything that's ever died and then became the soil, became part of the mycelia. So it knows everything that's ever happened on the Earth, everything.
And this
so
particular...
to tap that knowledge is...
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. So, and this particular mushroom is also one that doesn't really want to be captured, which I think is kind of fascinating. So you're a
Right.
mushroom forager. This isn't really a mushroom that people have been that successful at growing, have they, on their own? Like in
It's
a,
impossible to grow.
yeah.
You cannot grow it. No one has ever been able to grow my Amanita in a laboratory. You can only grow it can only grow out of the root of a tree.
Okay. So take me back to the first time that you got introduced to the mushroom. Was it a psilocybin mushroom or was it Amanita muscaria?
Well, I first was using psilocybin for quite a while before I discovered Amanita.
Okay.
Psilocybin's pretty easy to get. You can find it a lot of the time, and it's pretty commonly used. Everyone knows about it. Amanita is trickier because you can't find it very easily, and nobody really knows how to use it. When I first found it, it was several years ago, and I found it by accident. I was just wandering through a forest out in Brazil. I was on vacation. I already used to live in Brazil, and I just saw this forest and thought I'd go for a walk, a nice little walk through the forest. And as soon as I hopped the fence, I found this like blanket of red mushrooms just covering the whole ground of the forest. I had
Wow.
didn't know what it was. I just found it. I was like, wow. And I just started collecting. And the thing is, I need to say about this is that the chances of this happening are zero. The reason there's zero is because Amanita only appears one time a year. Okay,
Wow.
so like for it to appear at that in full abundance, it was there. I mean, the entire forest was full. To be
Wow.
that abundant and fresh the day that I showed up there, no, that's not a coincidence. Like it's impossible to be coincidence. And it's this random place. And so Amanita, look, nature itself has a way of communicating with us. It has a way of influencing us and having us move and go, work with it. And as I said, like Amanita, because it is like the brain of the earth, it houses all of the information. So if you're taking Amanita, it's then able to communicate that with you more easily. It's through intuitions and through synchronicities and through stuff that you'll understand, right? Stuff that you understand more deeply, not through a person, not through like an advertisement. It's not written down, but it's stuff that you get. Yeah, you pick it up.
Right. So when you came across this forest of red Amanita, what did you do? Bring it home? Did you think, oh, I think this is actually a mushroom that I could work with? What were your thoughts?
Um, I was just really excited when I first found it because I didn't know what it was going to be,
Hmm.
and I knew it was something cool. I took it home. To where I was staying in the cabin, and I tried to figure out how to use it. I screwed up the preparation a bunch of times. I got kind of sick a few times. But once I figured out how to prepare it correctly, I did my research. I sorted that out. When I started using it, it cured me of insomnia. And I'll let you know, that was a humongous deal because I had insomnia for 20 years. Since I was
Whoa.
13 years old, I had insomnia.
Wow.
And when I was 33, I discovered Amanita, and I never had insomnia ever again.
Did
And
you,
that changed my
did
life
the
forever.
Amanita, yeah, did the Amanita express to you what the insomnia was for, or was this just kind of a brain pattern that it suddenly healed for you?
I mean, it's kind of both. It did both of those things.
Hmm.
But I mean, that's kind of related to like my life purpose. Like, if I hadn't had, I mean, I tried every single thing on the earth to be able to sleep.
Wow.
But due to the bizarre ways in which I was traumatized when I was a child, I couldn't sleep. So this was the only thing that worked for me after decades of trying every therapy and medication and
Wow.
doctor's appointment, every single thing you could imagine,
That's
everything you
so
could imagine, and all the alternative stuff, the Reiki, all that stuff too. And
everything.
then Amanita, one gone. I was like, this is for me. So I think this happened to make it specifically so that I would
Exactly.
commit like this to bringing it to the
Right.
world because for whatever reason, I'm the person to do that.
Well, what's interesting too, I have not had sleep issues really in my life, but I had a daughter who did, and it can really mess with your well-being. It can mess with your equilibrium,
Everything.
your like happiness, everything. So at the time that you came across these mushrooms and you had the these sleep issues for so long. Were you suffering from any depression or anxiety or?
Well, I had
Yeah.
prior to like 3 years before discovering Amanita, I was atheist actually, and prior to that, I had always been atheist, and during that period of my life, I had all sorts of mental problems and emotional problems. I had all sorts of traumas. I was a very dysfunctional person.
Wow.
I had like just no. I didn't understand life at all, and I didn't see a point to it. And yeah, I mean, I had every kind of, I don't even know the list of it, but it was a lot. It was very bad.
Wow.
Depression. I had PTSD. I had panic attacks. I used to have no social skills at all. Even in like my late 20s, I wasn't really able to have like a meaningful conversation,
Wow.
which maybe is just surprising to people now, but
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting because we
yeah.
started this show and the first thing you talked about was God, and I interview a lot of people, and sometimes God is a like uncomfortable word even in the psychedelic space, and not as much obviously in conscious spaces, but even calling it God sometimes. So it's so interesting. At the time, I thought to myself, I wonder if he was ever an atheist. Because I also come
Yeah.
across a lot of people who were atheists and then did a psychedelic. And it's like, there's no way I could continue down a path of not believing in something greater than myself.
Yeah.
So I have a question too, because you mentioned that you had some trauma as a child and then not having skills maybe socially and not really understanding life and maybe some executive function skills and all those things. Were you in a situation where you had any parent that was a good mentor or role model? And if not, did Amanita become that for you?
Well, so before answering that question, you said something earlier I wanted to respond to, which
Mm-hmm.
was that there's really like two macro views of life that I now see things by,
Mm-hmm.
which is that one of them was before I discovered spirituality, and then obviously afterwards. And so the whole thing we discussed earlier about prayer, that sounded like ludicrous mumbo jumbo nonsense to me just a few years ago, until I discovered how to do it and that it actually works. And
Mm.
so to live as I have as a mushroom forager, as
Mm.
foraging for this rare mushroom Amanita Muscaria, no one even really knows what it is, so he wants it. But I dedicated my whole life to it in this insane gamble, living in a truck for 2.5 years with no money, no support. I don't have a family, like just to try to like serve this mushroom, try to bring it to the world. And uh, in my time of doing this, I came to master the skill that I'm telling you about. That's how I
Mm.
survived,
Mm.
because I didn't have to just survive financially. I had health problems. I had to make, it's very hard to live like that for a greater purpose, right? I had to you have to find a place to sleep all the time. There's nowhere safe you can go. You can never take a shower. I was harassed by police all the time. Many times was in lots and lots and lots of situations which were very, very dangerous. And
And
so the
alone.
only way to get through, yeah, and alone. And so the only way to go through all of this and survive it was by developing faith that's like basically invincible, to where nothing can really challenge it, to where the point where it's just like it would be stupid for me to not believe this anymore. And
Mm.
so for the person who I used to be, for like the atheist that I used to be, I would just say to that person like, it's because you don't believe in God that you don't get access to it.
Mm.
So if you don't have any faith, if you're not going to give gratitude for your existence, gratitude for the things that are already here, right? Like the gratitude for the earth and for the people and nature, and isn't it nice that we get to live?
Right.
That's the first thing we need to have as people. That's what I had to learn from that experience. And if you can have that gratitude as like the foundation of who you are, then everything else you do is really easy because it's just like adding on to what you've already got. You feel like you have more because you feel like you're part of something greater. And so by living your life in that way of pursuing a spiritual path and really learning how to be aligned with yourself and with everything else, that's how you learn to make that effective. So I wanted to get that pointed before I answered your second question. But your second question about a mentor, yeah, I mean, Amanita was always a guide for me, and it communicated with me in a number of different ways, and it always does. At this point, it treats me kind of like an asset. I don't know how to say it. Like, it treats me kind of like a soldier, and it just like makes me go do things and doesn't care if I don't like it or I'm not comfortable.
And how you said it speaks to you in multiple ways. Could you describe for somebody who's listening, who's never experienced microdosing with this mushroom or low dose or big dose, how it speaks to you?
Yeah. The way in the beginning was intuitively. In the very beginning, it was like when I would take Amanita, it was like my whole mind would be slightly lifted a little bit more out of my body. And I could feel and sense everything more deeply and clearly. Everything was crystal clear. And so when I would be just, thinking, just roaming around on my own, the thinking would be slower and more like controlled and balanced. And I started to notice that there was like this deeper layer of feelings that I had never paid attention to before. But it was like just a layer of feelings that was there. And if I could listen to it, I started to pick up on information. And like
so
listen
kind
to
of
it in
dropping
relation to
out
things.
of the mind and into the sensory system of the body.
Right.
And what the body feels, and move from that place of feeling versus maybe thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think comes naturally to people, because naturally we live in nature, where we're supposed to be out on nature, listening to the forest all the time.
Right.
I did an interview yesterday where they asked me, they said that in South America, the way they discovered how to make ayahuasca, because it's a combination of two different plants in the jungle, and the Amazon has infinite plants you could combine. But the way they knew to combine these two exact plants, chacruna and mariri, was that the plants told them.
Right.
That's what the indigenous people say. They said the same thing about hape, which is their form of tobacco. And
Right.
that's how I learned how to prepare Amanita tea correctly. The trees literally told me. And like, this is a real thing that you can practice if you go out into nature and you listen. And listen, like you're just in the state of listening. You're not
Right.
listening to something, or like you're not aiming for listening at something. You're just listening, and
Like
you are
open.
listening. Yes,
You
you're just
are
open.
listening. I
And
like that, actually.
right, and in the time of in doing this, obviously it feels good because you're out of nature, but also you just sort of you can sense things, and over time it starts to make sense. It's like listening to a language, and eventually you get the feel of it over time. Yeah.
How many different places, countries did this mushroom foraging take you to? Or was it in one region?
Well, it started in Brazil, and I had a lot of adventurous foraging down there. And then I foraged up here in the US now for 3 seasons, and always up in the Pacific Northwest. So everything from the redwood forests all the way up to the border of Canada, I foraged. And also Colorado, I foraged. I've tried to forage in Arizona in the mountains, but haven't found any. And I've tried it in a few other places. I'm gonna probably try near a little closer to San Francisco this year as well, in the forest, the redwood forest over there. Yeah.
So what would the difference be between microdosing and having a full dose with Amanita? And if you could even like compare maybe what that would be like compared to a psilocybin microdose and let's say a 3-gram dose. What's the difference between the kind of personality and energetics of these mushrooms?
Yeah. So an Amanita microdose is the best way to start. And I think that if you have any curiosity in it, if you're feeling like maybe this is the thing for you, just try it and see how you feel. Michaela has just tried my tincture. You want to show them the bottle? So I'm rebranding, so it does not have a label.
Right.
But that's what it comes in. It's an Amanita concentrate in a liquid form that you can just take in your mouth, and you don't have to prepare it or anything. That's the best. That's a very good way to start microdosing. Another option, if you also want to try it, is this one for people who like tablets. These are cleaner. And if you get these are from a company called Eons that I'm partnered with, and I actually produce the base product that they make their product from. So if you're interested in that, anyone out there wants that product, you can get 20% off on the Eons website for the code Warrior, if you're interested in that.
Okay.
But yeah, now that we've done the plug,
we'll post that.
When you take Amanita, when you microdose Amanita, you want to just go into the experience and take it as a meditative experience. You want to just try to feel what happens. Each person, it's going to affect in a slightly different way, but it will generally relax you and make you more calm and centered. You're going to feel more, your perceptions are going to be a little bit more vibrant. But I should say it's like the deeper perceptions are more vibrant. The more superficial perceptions are less vibrant. So your thoughts will be softer and quieter, but your feelings will be louder and deeper. And so that's what that's what lets you evolve, really. That's what leads to a person being able to find the true issues they have, is by going into their deep feelings, right?
Quieting
and so that's what
the mind,
the microdose
right?
does. Yeah, and so a lot of people will microdose, and they'll wake up in the morning. You have tons of energy when you sleep on Amanita because you sleep more deeply. A lot of times people have dreams. The dreams are usually more pleasant with Amanita than with something else. And you just feel like when you wake up in the morning, like this weight has been lifted. That happened to me many, many times. And this is a commonly reported thing amongst people who microdose Amanita, is that when they take the Amanita, the feeling of trauma, like the weight of baggage from the memory, is lifted.
Right.
And so you can still remember what happened to you,
like
but the memory,
what's it called that Eckhart Tolle called it? The pain body.
Right. Yeah. He calls it the pain body.
Kind of like it feels
right.
lifted.
Yeah. I mean, and you can practice this. So one thing I do as well is I guide people through microdose coaching groups when they take the Amanita. So one thing I practice with them is to take the Amanita, and then they meditate, and you just feel different memories. Like just feel the energy, the weight, and the of different things from your
like
past.
The density, maybe.
Right. And so all of therapy is about unweighting those memories, right? I mean, the goal is to not be traumatized. And so what Amanita does is it's like an automatic therapy that works while you sleep. Now, I'm saying this from my personal experience and from other accounts. But yes, like when you take it, it somehow rewires the brain, I believe through neurogenesis, it's neurogenic, and it makes it so that it is able to not be traumatized anymore and function efficiently.
Okay, this is really interesting because we're talking about dreams. And again, I am very new to Amanita, but I've been curious about it because I've interviewed a few people that have talked about how Amanita changed their life. In particular, an artist mother who was really down, going through a divorce, and microdosed and really felt like she was continually in conversation with Amanita, like, hey, can I take you today? And then the wisdom that she would get. So it's interesting. I started knowing that you were going to come on the show, but I haven't had enough of a experience with it yet. But now that you're saying this, so I took Amanita last week twice. And I had very interesting dreams. And I've always been someone who is interested in my dreams, but these were vivid. And they were like
Oh yeah.
very poignant to the
Oh yeah.
point where I actually like talked about them in like with some friends. I was like, wait, I need to tell you about my dream. And just kind of, this is really fascinating. These 3 dreams that I've had since I've started microdosing, I have to be honest. As you said, they weren't heavy. But they were very poignant. And because I've been interested in dreams, it's not that hard for me to kind of analyze what it's really telling me. So this is really interesting that you're saying this. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so the dreams are, interestingly enough, following your last question, that's what happens when you do a higher dose of Amanita. When you do a high dose, like a ceremonial dose, it will force you to sleep, and you will wake up in a lucid dream, which is more real than your life is here. And these dreams are fascinating and ultra vivid. They're full real experiences. And I would say they're thousands of times better than virtual reality.
Okay,
And
that's very different than an experience with psilocybin.
it's very different. It's a fully out of body experience. Psilocybin, you're still in your body.
Again, everybody's experience with psilocybin is different. Like it can feel sometimes like it's taking you into the shadow and you can feel like, whoa, I don't know if I want to go there. Does Amanita kind of do that, or is it a little different?
Okay, so the way Amanita works is like it's dosage based. So you can if you push the limits, if you take a lot, then you're gonna get pushed a lot, and you might be really uncomfortable, right? So, but if you take only a little bit, then it's gonna be super gentle. So if the person can scale, like, right, if they really want that growth and they're willing to go through the discomfort and the nausea and of a ceremony, like doing a high dose ceremony and all the dirtiness of it, then you can get more growth faster. But you have to be willing to like take it. And so it's not physically easy or comfortable to do a high dose ceremony, but what you can get out of it is the knowledge is so valuable that it's like worth it. So that's for like, if you're hardcore, then that's kind of what you would do. But if your person is more, just wants to test it out, then microdosing is better. Yeah.
Okay. And I also want to ask the question, I think I know the answer, that Amanita Muscaria is legal in the United States except for in Louisiana.
Yeah, it's legal pretty much everywhere in the world. There's only like a few rare places where it's not.
Okay.
And
so then why are we not talking about this more in the psychedelic space?
That's a great question. I really wish I had the answer to that. And I didn't have an answer. So I was like, well, I'm going to be the guy then. I mean, if no one else is going to do it, all right. I have no idea. It should be researched. It's cheap.
It's legal.
I have no idea.
You can find it
no
anywhere.
one pays attention to it. It cures PTSD. I was cured of PTSD from it. I will say I was cured of PTSD from it. I can't say legally that it will cure you of PTSD, but it did for me. And there's other people who make the same claim. I know people who've been benefited from Alzheimer's, OCD, Parkinson's, stuff there's no medicine for. And this is helping them. Not researched at all.
This is mind-blowing.
Okay.
Mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's because the pharmaceutical industry is still convincing people that they're trustworthy. Still, people are trusting pharmaceuticals. They're still on antidepressants. Like, what? Let's not get into that combo. But it's like people are so stuck. They're so stuck in the lie that even this obviously good thing, very like minimal side effects, cheap, they still had no interest in it. Oh man.
So there's that whole thing, right? So there's the whole pharmaceutical industry that a lot of people are asleep to. But in the psychedelic community, I talk to psychonauts all the time, or people that microdose, people that have done every medicine, right? I still feel like it's not talked about that much. Now, I interviewed...
Yeah, it's still hush-hush.
Yeah, well, I interviewed... do you know who Snow Raven is?
No.
Snow Raven is from Siberia. She's moved to the United States like 3 years ago. She's a musician. Her people were the Sakai people, so indigenous. And she talked
So she knows about
about
Amanita.
right, because the tradition of Christmas, right? When
Comes
they're
from it.
talking about that mushroom, they're talking about Amanita, aren't they? When the shamans
Yeah.
put threw the mushrooms into the chimney and drew them on the. Okay, so yeah, it's baffling. I guess we don't have the answer yet of why Amanita Muscaria, even in the psychedelic space, is really not given its due.
I can give it my 2 cents. And
Okay.
my only thought on it is that due to the way that humans have structured society for the last for a long time, Amanita was just sitting and waiting, and it intentionally did not want to be part of society until now. And I know this for sure because it's already gotten into like our culture, like Mario. And if you go on WhatsApp, you type in mushroom, you get an emoji of a Amanita.
Exactly.
If you were just talking about Christmas, everything about Christmas is related to Amanita Muscaria. Just go Google it. I can give my 2 cents on that too. But yeah, it's intentionally done this because it has a higher intent of what it wants to do.
See, I like
And so
this.
it's like been
that
holding
what you're
back
saying.
until
Yeah, I like
it's been
what you're
intentionally
saying.
holding back until we were ready, and then it's like, okay, now we go.
Well, what I like about what you're saying is you're reflecting back to me that as a human, sometimes I think of human consciousness as above, and we're not. And I know that. So what you're really saying is Amanita's deciding. It's not necessarily humanity deciding when to bring this mushroom into our consciousness and our lives, that Amanita is deciding.
I love this conversation because we're bringing up a really big, important topic, which is that in most spiritual circles, a lot of people are going to tell you, oh, you're God. You decide everything. You're the center of the universe. You're the most important. Like, they teach a selfish, narcissistic personality of spirituality.
Right.
The way that things actually work in nature is a hierarchy. If there was not a sun, there would not be life on the earth. If there was not Amanita Muscaria, the forest would be disorganized and ugly. If there was not an ocean, there would be no water. Like it's like there is an automatic hierarchy to nature. And guess what, everybody? We came from nature, which means there's a hierarchy for us too. And if you don't respect it, you don't get to be part of it. You have to be respectful, which means in alignment with like your needs and the needs of others around you and what the world needs. You have to be in alignment with that in order to be a functional part of the Earth's ecosystem. And if you're not going to do that, you get kicked out. That's how it works in the forest. And there's even stuff that confirms this. There's a type of fish, for example, in the ocean that cleans the teeth of other fish. It eats the bacteria off of other fish. It's this little blue fish that swims in the mouth of sharks, and they'll open their mouth, and this fish swims in the shark's mouth and eats the bacteria off. Guess what happens if a shark eats one of those fish?
Ooh,
All of the creatures of the ocean attack it.
Whoa.
It becomes an outcast. All of them.
Wow.
They group up against it because they know that thing is so important. You see what I'm saying? Nature has an automatic.
Yeah, what you're
They
talking
know
about is that we're
animals
like
are smart. Yeah.
Yeah, we're an interbeing. Like
Yes.
what's a tree? A tree doesn't exist without the sun and the dirt and the soil and all the living organisms on it. And, maybe sharks, again, without teeth, can they survive? And without someone taking care of them, that's like their human dentist, But yes, the hierarchy and the intelligence of nature, I think we are just, as Westerners anyway, people from the global north, just beginning to have a deeper understanding of, it doesn't mean that all, that our ancestors didn't already have that.
Yeah. We think we're the dominant organism on the planet. No, the mycelium is the dominant organism. If it doesn't want us to have resources, it'll just cut it off. It'll just cut you off. And I've seen people don't believe me when I say this stuff. I've seen people. There were dozens of people throughout the years when I was developing my company as a forager. I was out trying to make partnerships and make products with people and like expand. And I met dozens of people that tried to just rip my knowledge out of me and just go make their own company with it. Dozens. and just left and right, people who just wanted money, and they don't care at all about the mushroom. They don't care at all about healing people at all. They just want money.
Right.
And these people who behaved in this way, stuff would happen to them that was inexplicable, and like I had nothing to do with it, but like their business would just get screwed up, and then they would go out of business, or they would like something would happen or other, and they would like, lose all a bunch of money, and then they couldn't sell Amanita anymore. Like the Amanita would have something happen that would cut them off,
Right.
which is, in my opinion, like close to like an act of God. And this would happen. This happened so consistently that I never questioned it anymore.
Wow.
And I've seen it do things to me when I disobeyed, and I'm like, nope, I know what's up. And like this is the way that people need to be treating in relation to the creator, like life itself. We need to respect life more.
Right. Yeah. So if there were like, let's say, I don't want to give you like 5 because I don't want to contain you, but if you are the voice of Amanita Muscaria and you're this Amanita Warrior, and you've come to tell us today the most important things that you would want people to know about Amanita. We're already starting with the fact that there's a creator and humans don't sit at the top of the chain of hierarchy on this planet, and that prayer is really important, and intention, and that this mushroom has a wisdom that we can't really understand. It doesn't want to be contained. No one can grow it. It's healed you of sleeping disorders, anxiety, PTSD. It's even taught you how to socialize. It's changed your life. And you've learned how to trust this organism. That's a lot already. Have we missed anything about this magic being?
Let me tell you a little bit about my life, and try to paint the picture of like what this is like for me.
Okay.
So what I understood from the beginning was basically that if people can develop faith, that this is so effective at problem solving, it's so effective at meeting your needs, that it will eliminate the system we currently live in.
Okay.
This is what I understood to be true anyways. Because if people can get their needs met through prayer, well, why are you going to go slave away at a 9 to 5? You can get it done some other way.
Right.
So,
and when you
it would
say
change
that,
the way
what you're
society
really
looks.
so what you're really saying there is that, I'm not necessarily, I could pray that like millions of dollars are going to fall out of the sky, or my needs, whatever I need, is going to be met. And those needs will be met financially and abundantly. I won't necessarily know how. It might move me to do this career, or it might move me to meet this person. That in some way, prayer will move me in directions that will answer that prayer. And in that, it changes the whole system of how I might live my life.
Right. So when you recognize that your internal energy has an external effect, it changes the way you live. This is undeniable. And people don't realize that this is how things work, that it's your emotion and your internal belief system that generates the external experience you have. And so when they recognize that it actually works this way, that's actually a really big difference in how people will live. And what it would mean is that people would abandon fear. Because when you can make your own experience and you know that you're doing it, why would you be scared? If you understand that there is something that is ordering everything, like a God or a life or whatever you want to call it. If you understand that there is something and you trust it, you know that it is ordering things, then why would you be scared?
Right. And
even
it's
if you die,
benevolent.
you're going to end up something like.
Right. And if it's benevolent and has your best interest, even if you can't understand it.
Right. And so the thing that people don't understand is that if you believe in that, over time, that becomes true for you. And if you don't believe it, over time, that will become true for you. This is the thing people didn't get before. And so somehow I saw this and I was like, oh man, people need to hear that. And so I spent my whole life trying to figure out how, like the right way to bring that kind of a message. And I've tried for years, but I'm still trying right now.
Honestly, haven't you noticed even in the last 3 to 4 years, the openness to people to hear or to even take psychedelics or to open up their mind
Oh
to
yeah.
having these glimpses, people that would never have ever gone down this path.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole dimension is flipping, and so like the people are starting to see this. It's like this. It's like people will gravitate towards what is true, which is like what is necessary. You could almost say. So people will gravitate towards that, or they'll gravitate towards unnecessary. And so what I'm trying to say is like through the whole talk, there's kind of two macro types of people. There's one that believes that there is a higher power, and there's one that doesn't. And if you believe that there's a higher power, what this does is it allows you to be connected to everything else, right? Because you believe you're part of it, and yet you are part of it, and that you're important in some way,
Right.
and that somehow you have to contribute something to the world. And so because you live like this, you care about the consequences of your actions. But if you don't believe in that there's a higher power, if you don't care, if you think that when you die there's no consequences, like you just stop existing, people who don't believe in an afterlife, well, they're just going to be reckless, aren't they? Why would they be careful about their behavior? Why would they, limit themselves in this lifetime? Why would they limit themselves? Why would they ever do it? No, they would, like, if you think that this is all you get, this one body, then you're just going to stack up as much physical pleasure as you can. And then, you middle finger to everyone, and then you die. That's the way it goes. And so these people think there's no consequences, and they're wrong. The problem is that if you're a human being, you have a soul, and that means that you can never stop existing. It doesn't matter what you do. You're always going to exist forever and ever and ever. And so you're either going to face your problems and figure it out and grow, or you can go down and be a wretched demon.
Well, it's interesting because, it's also the way to liberation, in a lot of ways. It's like
it is the way to everything. The way to the truth. It's the way to God. It's the way to yourself. It's just in feeling and knowing that you are part of something bigger, and you don't question it anymore. And all these little problems in your life, like, yeah, you'll still have them, but eventually they go away. Like gradually, the more your faith is strong, the more that stuff gets manageable, and the superficial stuff stops mattering. It's when people can't can't break an addiction, or they can't stop doing their old nonsense, or making the same excuses, or making the same lies. Then you have a serious problem. That's a problem that no one can solve except them. And if the person doesn't want to, well, nature's going to say goodbye.
So would you say that's the greatest teaching that you've received from Amanita?
Oh yeah, I mean, this is all the stuff I'm teaching. All the stuff I'm saying right now is this is all energy dynamics. Energy dynamics work in a holographic fashion, meaning you can apply it to a human, you can apply it to an ecosystem in nature, you can apply it to a civilization. When you understand energy dynamics, which is essentially just the way that you focus attention, right? So if you believe in a certain way, your emotions go in a certain way. That's your energy, and that makes an experience for you. And if you understand how this works at a macro scale of like many people doing this all at the same time, then you get a deeper perspective of life.
I hope you enjoyed this episode with the Amanita Warrior. Look for part 2 of this episode next week on the Psychedelic Mom Podcast.